So now for more on what Sanders' momentum could mean for the Democrats, we're joined by Annette Magnus. She is the executive director of Battle-Born Progress, and it's a progressive advocacy group based in Nevada. She joins us now from Las Vegas. Thank you so much for joining us, Annette.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so why don't we start with what this significant victory in Nevada means for the Sanders campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. So Nevada is an important state for both the primary election and for the general election coming up in November. And, you know, Bernie Sanders has built a lead here because he did well in 2016 in Nevada, and he stayed in Nevada, done work over the past 4 years, and now he's building momentum here as well. What we're seeing is his message is really resonating with Nevadans. They care deeply about healthcare. They want better health care in Nevada. And so that's part of the reason I think he's doing so well here, especially among Latinos.
And it's interesting because if you read a lot of analysis following these primary and caucus races that you see, a lot of people are saying that the Democratic Party is finding this really challenging to grapple with, the fact that Bernie Sanders is really coming out on top by a significant amount. What does this mean for the Democratic Party?
Well, frankly, I'm not surprised. He's always had a large amount of support in the community, especially grassroots support. So I'm not surprised to see Bernie Sanders doing well. I think he's done a lot of hard work over the past 4 years, like I said, to really build his movement, get to know voters all across the United States, and really start to show who he is and build that momentum. So he hired some really smart people here on the ground. His staff was incredible. He staffed up heavily before the primary election. I think you're going to see him doing that going into South Carolina and then going into Super Tuesday. And I do think the Democratic Party is going to have to figure out what this means, because there is a growing progressive movement within the Democratic Party in the United States. And they're going to have to figure that out. What does that mean for progressives? And what does that mean for the party? And how does that look moving forward into 2020? And so it's going to be an interesting time, I think.
And you know, when you come out with those who actually engage, the numbers of the people who actually engage in these particular primary votes, for example, it's not necessarily completely reflective of what would happen in the election, in the presidential election coming up later on this year. So I'm wondering how much weight you can really put in the results of all of these preliminary races, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a primary election is a reflection of what the people within the Democratic Party are looking for, the true hardcore supporters of the Democratic Party. But, you know, in a primary election, nobody's going to be happy. Someone is going to be upset because their candidate didn't make it through. You saw that in 2016 with Bernie Sanders supporters once Hillary Clinton got the nomination. And so for them, or for all of us, we're going to have to see where this or how this turns out. I think it's really important to also remember that this is a long process. There's a lot at stake all across this. And so you're going to go into South Carolina, then you're going to go into Super Tuesday, but there's a long road to the nomination for the Democratic Party. And so there's still a lot of work to be done by all of the campaigns to see where we go from here.
Given the fact that Sanders does have a number of victories under his belt now, I guess part of the question is looking ahead, you know, speculating, assuming that perhaps he is the person who becomes the presidential nominee. At what point does he need to actually become a Democrat? He's been sitting as an independent.
Yeah, you know, I'm going to let Bernie Sanders figure that one out when he needs to be a Democrat in the Democratic primary. I think that's a big part of why you're seeing some of the Democrats within the party saying, well, he's never even been a Democrat. How is he going to win the Democratic nomination? He calls himself a Democratic socialist. I think that's something he's going to have to explain to the American people. And he's going to have to explain that to people within the Democratic Party who have been here for a very long time. And so I'm going to leave that to Senator Sanders to figure out how to do that.
And finally, I wanted to ask you, one of the other pieces of analysis we see often now, given the fact that there have been these victories for the Sanders campaign, is whether or not he could successfully take on the U.S. President Donald Trump in the presidential election. How does that seem to be shaping up? I mean, you've been talking to a lot of voters yourself.
Yeah, look, I think voters, including myself, are fed up with Donald Trump. he is disgusting, and he doesn't represent what this country stands for. And so I think at this point, people are so desperate for a change. Any of these candidates will be able to beat Donald Trump in the general election. And I know that I'm going to do everything I can. The people around me are going to do everything they can, no matter who the nominee is, to get rid of Donald Trump, because he is a horrifying reflection of what is happening in this country. And so we are going to do everything we can and work as hard as we possibly can. And I want to say one other thing, too. Nevada is an important state, not just in the primary election, but in the general election, too. We are a swing state. We are a purple state, as I like to call it. And we often go in the direction the rest of the country is going to go. So if you see us starting to go for Bernie Sanders, I think that's a good indication of where we're going to go during the general election. And so I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to get rid of Donald Trump once and for all.
All right. Well, it continues to develop. We'll continue to watch. Thanks for this, Annette. That is Annette Magnus, and she's the executive director of Battle Born Progress, and she joined us from Las Vegas.
Thank you.